Enron was once celebrated as one of America's most innovative companies. As a shining star on Wall Street, it climbed the ranks to become the 7th largest corporation in the country, earning the title of America's most innovative company 6 years in a row from Fortune magazine. But behind the scenes, something wasn't right. While the stock price soared and its executives basked in success, a web of deception and greed was quietly being spun. This is the story of how personal ambition, unchecked power, and financial manipulation fueled Enron's meteoric rise, only to set the stage for one of the most shocking corporate collapses in history. What happened at Enron was more than just a business failure. It was a tale of fraud, betrayal, and broken dreams, with consequences that reverberated far beyond the company itself. Enron's story begins in 1985, when Kenneth Lay brought together two natural gas companies, Houston Natural Gas and Intranorth, all to create a new energy giant. The result was Enron, a company with grand ambitions to dominate the energy market. But Lay's vision didn't stop with energy production. He wanted to transform Enron from a traditional gas supplier into a global powerhouse, trading energy contracts in a way that the world had never seen before. By the early 1990s, Enron wasn't just an energy company anymore. It was becoming an energy trading juggernaut. This shift was driven by a man named Jeffrey Skilling, who became the company's chief operating officer. Skilling introduced a radical new way of doing business, turning energy into a commodity that could be traded like stocks and bonds. At this point, Enron was no longer just delivering gas. It was selling contracts for future deliveries of gas and electricity, speculating on prices, and essentially betting on the future of the energy market. This change, combined with the deregulation of the energy industry in the 1990s, allowed Enron to charge more for energy, boosting profits. Deregulation meant that Enron could operate with far less oversight, opening the door to new ways of making money, but also new ways to hide losses. Enron was on fire. In 1992, it became North America's largest natural gas seller, raking in millions. By the end of the decade, it had launched Enron Online, a groundbreaking website that allowed the company to manage its trading contracts and energy deals entirely online. Business was booming, and so was Enron's stock price. In 1999 alone, Enron's stock price jumped by 56%, and the following year, it surged by another 87%. By the year 2000, Enron's stock was trading at over $83 a share, with a market value of more than $60 billion. Wall Street loved it, investors loved it, and analysts couldn't stop praising it. Enron was hailed as a shining example of the new economy, a company that was pushing the boundaries of innovation and reaping the rewards. But as the world would soon learn, this success was built on a house of cards. What people didn't know was that behind Enron's success lay a tangled web of financial tricks and deceptive accounting practices. Jeffrey Skilling and Enron's CFO, Andrew Fastow, had devised a plan to make Enron appear far more profitable than it actually was. They wanted to show massive growth, no matter the cost. To achieve this, Enron used a controversial accounting method called mark-to-market accounting. Here's how it worked. Enron would sign long-term contracts to sell energy, often for 10 or 20 years into the future. But instead of recording the actual income when it came in, they would estimate the entire profit of the deal up front, as if they'd already made the money. This gave the illusion of huge immediate profits, even though the actual cash flow might not come in for years, or might not even come in at all. And as if that wasn't bad enough, it didn't stop there. To hide its growing debt and to cover up bad investments, Enron created a series of special purpose entities, or SPEs. These were essentially shadow companies, designed to keep Enron's debt off its balance sheet. By transferring its debts to these SPEs, Enron could make its financial statements look far healthier than they really were. Think of it this way. Imagine you have a lot of debt on your personal credit card, but you want to look good when you apply for a loan. So instead of showing the bank all of your debt, you create a separate bank account under a different name. Let's call it your friend. You move all of your credit card debt to this friend's account. Now, when the bank looks at your financial situation, it seems like you have no debt. But in reality, It's still there, just hidden in another place. And that's exactly what Enron was doing. These SPEs weren't reducing their debt, they were just hiding it from plain sight. These shadow companies weren't just shady, they were fraudulent. In many cases, they were managed by Enron's own executives, including CFO Andrew Fastow, who personally profited to the tune of $45 million from these dealings. So Andrew Fastow wasn't just hiding debt, he was enriching himself at the same time. It was all a house of cards, carefully constructed to give investors, employees, and regulators the false sense that Enron was thriving. By the year 2001, cracks in Enron's facade began to show. In August, Jeffrey Skilling, the man who had helped build Enron's trading empire, suddenly resigned as CEO, just 6 months into his new role. The move shocked investors and analysts alike. Why would the man at the helm of one of America's most successful companies step down without a warning? Skilling's departure made people suspicious, but the real trouble started soon after. In October of that same year, Enron announced it had lost $618 million in just 3 months. But that wasn't all. They also admitted that the value of the company had dropped by $1.2 billion, meaning the portion of the company that belonged to shareholders was shrinking fast. This is what's known as shareholder equity. Think of it like owning a house. If your house loses value or you take on more debt, the part of the house that you truly own gets smaller. For Enron, this drop in shareholder equity was a huge red flag, signaling to Wall Street that something was seriously wrong with the company's finances. At the same time, Enron's broadband division, which had been heavily promoted as the company's next big thing, was bleeding money. The broadband business, which promised to revolutionize the delivery of high-speed internet, had never really gotten off the ground. The losses were staggering, with Enron's broadband sector reporting losses of $102 million in just 1 quarter. As Enron's financial situation worsened, Ken Lay, who had returned as CEO after Skilling's departure, tried to reassure employees and investors that everything was fine. Lay sent emails to employees encouraging them to keep buying Enron stock, claiming that the price would rise again. But behind the scenes, Lay himself was doing the exact opposite, selling off his own shares, quietly unloading more than 350,000 shares and pocketing over $20 million, even as he told others to hold on. While the top brass at Enron was scrambling to cover up the mess, one woman inside the company was sounding the alarm. Sherron Watkins, a vice president at Enron, had grown increasingly concerned about the company's accounting practices. In August of 2001, just weeks after Skilling's resignation, she wrote an anonymous letter to Ken Lay, warning him that Enron was in danger of collapsing in a wave of accounting scandals. And Watkins, she wasn't just speculating, she had done her homework. She presented Lay with a detailed report of her concerns, outlining the use of off-balance sheet partnerships and the shady deals that were propping up Enron's financial statements. But rather than acting on her concerns, Lay turned to Enron's law firm and accounting firm, both of which assured him that nothing was wrong. Watkins' warnings would go unheeded, but the cracks were growing deeper. By November of 2001, credit rating agencies began downgrading Enron's credit rating to junk status. The company was on the brink of collapse, and investors were fleeing. A potential merger with Dynegy, which might have saved Enron, fell apart when Dynegy executives realized just how deep Enron's problems ran. By December 2nd, 2001, it was over. Enron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, marking the largest bankruptcy in US history at the time. The company that had been worth $60 billion just a year earlier was now worthless. Enron stock, which had once traded at over $90 a share, plummeted to just 26 cents a share. The impact was devastating. More than 20,000 employees lost their jobs, and $2 billion in pension funds evaporated overnight. These were regular people, many of whom had trusted their retirement savings to Enron stock, and ended up being left with nothing. For investors, the fallout was arguably even worse. A staggering $74 billion was wiped out in the collapse, shaking the foundations of Wall Street and sending shockwaves through the energy sector. Enron's sudden collapse was a wake-up call for corporate America. exposing the fragility of a system built on greed and deception. In the aftermath of the collapse, the key players at Enron faced their day of reckoning. Ken Lay, Enron's founder, was indicted on charges of fraud and conspiracy. But before he could be sentenced, Lay died of a heart attack in 2006. Jeffrey Skilling, the mastermind behind Enron's aggressive accounting practices, was convicted of fraud and insider trading. He was sentenced to 24 years in prison, though his sentence was later reduced. Andrew Fastow, the CEO who had orchestrated the company's off-the-book deals, was also sentenced to prison, serving 6 years after cooperating with investigators. But the Enron scandal wasn't just about these individuals. It exposed a system that had allowed corporate fraud to flourish. Arthur Andersen, Enron's accounting firm, was found guilty of obstruction of justice for shredding documents related to the scandal. The company, once one of the big 5 accounting firms, collapsed as a result. In the wake of the scandal, Congress passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2002, introducing stricter rules for financial reporting and corporate transparency. The act imposed tougher penalties for fraud and required CEOs to personally certify the accuracy of their company's financial statements, something that might have prevented the Enron disaster if it had been in place earlier. The Enron scandal also changed the way investors and regulators viewed corporate America. It served as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power, poor oversight, and the relentless pursuit of profit at any cost. At this point, you're probably wondering, what is aggressive accounting practices? Well, the discovery of double-entry bookkeeping and how the Medici conquered the world is the video up next. Be like Sherron Watkins. Please blow the whistle on this channel. Please like and subscribe.